In a rowdy bar, two youthful young men get into a surprisingly heated fight. Don't look at the lights here, but this is no ordinary brawl. One of them is a member of the noble Swedish royal family, Prince William. It's a real shock that a titular prince actually met in a bar on a narrow path. The farce quickly became a media sensation. Cell phone cameras are lighting up and people are commenting. The face of the royal family was lost, and the queen was furious. She demands that William has to come forward and give a profound public apology speech. She told William to clean up the negative impact this drama has had on the royal family. What's even more interesting is that the queen made a bold decision. She's sending the fighting prince to a prestigious boarding school, Hilleska. It looks like the queen wants to use this opportunity to hammer William. She hoped he would learn his lesson in this more disciplined school. From there, he needs to become more knowledgeable and mature. William was adamant about not agreeing to go to boarding school. William doesn't want to live the life of an exalted, unearthly prince though, but he was also aware that the queen's orders could not be disobeyed. So, the prince of noble status came to this new school with the aura of a prince on his back. On his first day of school, he felt like he was on a huge stage. His every move is watched. It made him feel physically and mentally exhausted, and becoming a prince was no easy task. During his school life, William was required to attend church and also join the choir and dedicate their welcome party to their own voices. From the stage, Phyllis, a chubby aristocratic girl, waved at him, and next to that Augustine has been courting Phyllis. However, an unexpected welcome party performance in the middle. William's otherwise uninterested mood is changed by a loud singing male voice. Simon's enthusiasm and effusive smile made William smile. In a school full of all kinds of relationships and variables, Augustine proposes that William join his Forest Ridge home for an initiation ceremony. However, in order to get into the party, Augustine needs Simon's help. Simon, on the other hand, asked for a bottle of wine as a condition. After all, not only is Simon not an aristocrat, he's also gay, and is loathed and ostracized by many at school. I didn't realize Simon wasn't interested at all. He rushes to the stable to pick up his sister Sarah. Sarah is very close to Phyllis, and she's envious of Phyllis' life. Coupled with being surrounded by classmates of noble birth, Sarah is slowly becoming a snob. She has to climb up with the aristocratic kids and everything, even buying very expensive breeches. It was a headache for Mom. Her husband, who was a misfit and drank and did drugs every day, lived apart from them. She carries the burden of her family alone. Sarah's high spending adds to the already poor family's woes. The next day in class, Simon's brilliant speech caught William's attention again. During dinner, William took the initiative to find Simon for a chat. He said he enjoyed the ideas Simon presented in class. Simon smiled a little smugly. Augustine, seeing how pleasantly the two were chatting, hurriedly called William to his side. Simon looked at William from a distance and suddenly felt a stirring inside that he had never felt before. He somewhat resisted the urge to move closer to the man, and to satisfy Sarah's vanity, he approached Augustine for a quid pro quo. If Augustine can make sure he and Sarah are invited to the party, he'll help bring the blseries. Augustine obliged him with a full heart. Simon finds his dad to help him in order to get the wine. The dad, who was filled with guilt about his son and his family, immediately helped him out. At the party, Augustine and a few other people are wearing a variety of masks. They gagged William with a cloth and dragged him to a pool with no water. They tied him to a statue of a boy and sprayed him with water from a water pistol. Afterwards took a rope and held him so that he crawled on the ground, one still sitting on him, and the people next to him watched the ridiculous farce with excitement. To add insult to injury, they forced William to drink their saliva. This initiation is just sick. Finally, under a lighted ball, Augustine holds William's head and makes him swear. That is, he will always honor the proud traditions of Forest Ridge House. William did as he was told and finally joined Forest Ridge officially. The rave party has also officially begun. It's clear that Simon and Sarah are out of place at a party like this, and William looked at Simon with interest. He then raised a glass of wine and drank it down as the crowd gathered around him, eliciting cheers and shouts. He kicked the party into high gear. By the second half, Simon was slowly approaching William. The two chatted for a few moments and came outside in silence. William sings the song Simon sang at the welcome party. He said Simon was the only one singing from the heart that day, complimenting him on how well he sang. Simon smiled shyly and asked William if he was happy here. William kept his head down and said happy, but the expression on his face betrayed what he was really thinking inside. At that moment, Augustine comes out looking for William, who rushes to bury his head in fear of being discovered. He pressed Simon's head to keep him quiet. Naughty Simon, whispering William's name twice. This scared William so much that he rushed to cover his mouth with his hand. The distance between the two was thus shortened. Simon blushed sheepishly and William also sensed that such an action was too ambiguous and immediately dropped his hand. The strings of the teenager sprouted in this moment. Later, Both William and Simon join the rowing team organized by Augustine. William teaches Simon to keep his balance, does morning exercises together, and sits down to discuss rowing techniques. The two are spending more and more time together. On this day, the two were sitting together reading a book. Augustine comes over and asks them to join training that night, but Simon turns him down. In the evening, William messages Simon to ask why he's not coming to practice. Simon says that he has promised his friend that he will go to the soccer game and asks William to come along. While internally torn, Augustine pushes in the door and calls him to training. Eventually, William shrugged it off by pretending he wasn't feeling well. When Augustine leaves, William rushes to message Simon that he'll be there. He then sneaks out of the school in the dead of night to find Simon. Both smiled upon seeing each other. William, in particular, is clearly much happier with Simon than he was at school. Coming onto the field, William ran to get a hot dog bun. Friend Ayubit sees that Simon likes William and flirts with him. Simon blushes and won't let Ayubit make any more jokes, but he does have a crush on William. William happily hands Simon the bread. The two watched the game and sad. Simon couldn't resist picking up his cell phone and taking a picture of a laughing William and posting it online. After the race, the four traveled on their motorcycles. William blows in the wind and yells that this is the life of freedom he wants, but this canary always goes back to living in a cage. William's unauthorized absence from school to find Simon is still discovered by Augustine. Augustine plays the video Simon uploaded and tells William someone as low class as Simon close to him just for attention. He told him to stay away from Simon and not to forget the lesson of the last video fiasco. So William messaged Simon and asked him to delete the video. Simon was upset but had to delete the video. The next day, the principal told Augustine that his mother had not paid his tuition and could not be reached. Augustine is also struggling with the fact that he's been in school since his dad died. Mom doesn't care about him either, and Augustine develops ADHD. In order not to let his classmates know, he secretly buys medicine to take, but the pills are almost gone, and the only one left has to be broken in half, just in time for Simon to approach him for money for his last drink. Augustine then says that if Simon can't get him the medicine, he will double his compensation. Simon had to go find his dad again and sneak some medicine in the drawer when he wasn't looking. While training, Simon hands Augustine his medication and asks him when he'll get paid. In fact, Augustine's family has gone bankrupt and can't give Simon any money, so he can only pay him perfunctorily. In the evening, Phyllis invites everyone to watch a horror movie. The only light emanating from the darkened room was the screen. William and Simon are sitting together. William was so timid and scared that he put his hand on Simon's leg. Simon sensed his fear and slowly put a finger in his hand. William didn't duck and the two looked at each other, as if encouraged. Simon took William's fingers further. The small gesture brought William great joy and his smile at Simon. Just then, Sarah sensed their little gesture and glanced toward their hands. William was afraid Augustine would see it too, and hurriedly scattered. He got up and walked outside, taking deep breaths over and over. The touch he had just received made his heart race, and he kept running his hand over his chest to calm himself down. Simon chased after him as well, and the two talked at the window. The only thing that could be heard in the quiet and gray space was the two men's breaths intertwined with each other. Simon looked at William and suddenly kissed him on the forehead. William didn't resist, just looked at him. Simon gave another bold kiss. At that moment, the people in the room watching the movie suddenly clamored, and the two men freaked out and pulled away. William ruffled his hair and apologized to Simon. Simon thought it was a rejection and tried to leave but was pulled by the hand. The two of them got closer and closer, and the atmosphere became more and more ambiguous. William doesn't know if he really likes Simon, but he could never unload the fact that he was a prince. The next day, while teaching Simon to play the piano, William tells Simon to forget about last night. Simon had to silently oblige him, but that kiss was like magic. Even with the deliberate distance, William misses Simon more and more. He began to get restless with his thoughts and could only scroll through Simon's social media platforms over and over again. But the more he looked at it, the more he couldn't stop the emotions that were churning inside him. He finally couldn't resist wanting to be with Simon. After gym class on this day, William tells Simon that students are picked up by their parents on weekends. He just wanted to spend the weekend with Simon and have Simon keep him company. Simon asks him rhetorically if he's not trying to forget about that. William stared straight at him and said he'd take that back. Simon's instructional coaching bill was sent home to keep his mom from paying for himself. Simon comes back to Augustine for money. Augustine simply plays it safe this time, because he knows Simon wouldn't dare tell the principal. After all, it was Simon who brought all this contraband into the school. On Friday, parents drove in to pick up their kids. They also had to eat together at school and sing at church. Simon watches happily from the stage as William sings along. William happily sang along with him. The sweetness and joy between the two is something only they understand. William Saturday next to Simon during the meal. Simon introduces Mom to William. Phyllis' mom at the table asked if Sarah had taken riding lessons. Sarah breaks down the fact that Phyllis can't ride a horse to her face. She also said that Phyllis' dad's high-priced horse had been in Sarah's care. This brought Phyllis down and she ran out crying. William also runs out to comfort Phyllis, saying she's the perfect girl. That comment led Phyllis to believe that William had been secretly watching her as well. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed William, not thinking that she would be rejected. Suffering blow after blow, Phyllis runs away crying. Augustine, because her mom can't pay her own tuition, she's still out squandering dad's inheritance, and he's arguing with mom. Simon finds him again and asks for money. Augustine, who is furious, pushes Simon down and doesn't intend to pay back the money. Simon really didn't want to be fooled by him. At night, Simon stops Augustine to make him pay back the money immediately. Augustine, unimpressed, tells Simon to hurry home and turns to leave. The more Simon thinks about it, the angrier he gets, and rushes up to Augustine and tackles him to the ground, holding his head down to make him pay back the money. Augustine had to tell Simon about the fact that his family had gone bankrupt, and that he simply didn't have the money to pay it back. But Simon doesn't care and just tells him to hurry up and pay it back. Augustine returned to his room and was troubled when Phyllis, who has hit a wall with William, comes to him for comfort. Phyllis initiated the kiss to him. Augustine herself has always had a soft spot for Phyllis. The two spent a lingering night together. On the day of the weekend, Simon told his mom he was going back to Ayub's house for the night. William tells Simon about Augustine's weekend detention. He's afraid Augustine will find out and ruin their date, and wants to go to his house with Simon for the weekend. The two set off with anticipation. William, however, is stopped by his psych teacher and told to take a call. That phone call completely changed William's situation. Mom sadly told William on the phone that his brother had died in a car accident. William couldn't take the news at all. Before that, there was the brother who was the crown prince and carried the weight of the royal family. William can't still live like a child, but now that his brother is gone, his burden as the sole heir to the throne is heavier. William is devastated by the unexpected death of his brother. The funeral was being solemnized, and William fought back tears to see his brother off. He became the sole heir to the throne, and couldn't be a carefree little prince like he was before. After the funeral, William went back to school for a prayer meeting, and again listened to Simon sing in church. He couldn't even look at Simon. After the prayer meeting, Simon approached William. Instead, he is told by William that they can't go on. William also had to delete all the messages from the two men's correspondence. At this point, William, who carries the crown prince status, has to give up Simon, because if the outside world found out that the future king was gay, it would surely disgrace the family. The school got William a bigger room. William Saturday on his bed, took out his cell phone, fought back the heartache, and deleted Simon's contact information. He exhaled deeply, remembering that kiss and touch with Simon. He suddenly gasped with sadness. He unbuttoned and grabbed his hair and stormed out of the room, wanting to be alone, but the bodyguard always follows him. On the way, William bumps into a thinly clad Phyllis. He takes his jacket off and puts it on Phyllis and says a prayer with her in a hole. The next day, Phyllis and Augustine hold hands in front of their friends and kiss goodbye to announce that they are officially together. Simon takes all the medicine from Dad's house and gives it to Augustine to sell to pay back the money. Augustine isn't happy about this. Simon then threatens to tell the whole school about his family's bankruptcy. Augustine, who is in a difficult situation, has to agree to quietly transfer money to Simon after selling the drugs. Within days, Augustine sees Phyllis with William's jacket. She and William were happily joking and laughing. He secretly thinks Phyllis and William are dating behind his back. When he came to the stable to look for Phyllis afterward, he only saw Sarah at the stable. Augustine, seeing that no one is around, lusts after Sarah and kisses her. Sarah frowns in place for a moment without reacting and watched Augustine leave. To get back at William, Augustine quietly leaves him a note. He asked him to go to a club meeting in the evening. At night, William quietly jumps out the window and goes to a shed. I didn't realize Augustine had gotten William high. And unconscious, William goes over a barbed wire fence and braves the rain to get to the soccer field. He was hallucinating, talking and dancing with a model. Immediately afterward, he grabbed a stone from the grass and licked it. It was as if he had been set free and forgotten that he was a prince. William calls Simon, who is sleeping, and confesses his love. But Simon hears something strange about William and rushes to find him on his bike. When Simon arrived, William's entire body was sprawled out on the grass. Unconscious, Simon could see that William was high and helped him up. William kept holding Simon and wouldn't let go. Simon had to push the cart with one hand and support William with the other, struggling to get him back to his room. The next morning, William remembers last night and feels ashamed of himself for last night. Simon laughed and said it didn't matter, but William was still embarrassed. He put his face over Simon and spewed his guts. Simon stroked his hair in response to his confession. Hearing this, William braced his body with his hands and slowly approached Simon. Both of them were also breathing heavier and heavier, and the air was filled with the scent of youthful hormones. The kisses became passionate as well. Simon ran his hands down William's back and slowly down to his hips. The two were immersed in intense lovemaking. They hadn't the slightest inkling that Augustine had seen it all from the window. He also secretly videotaped the video of their entanglement. This is inevitably going to cause another uproar. Early the next morning, the sunlight poured over the boy's bare skin. The two woke up and couldn't resist kissing each other again. While the love is strong, someone comes knocking on the door for William to go to breakfast. Scaring the two apart, Simon was still laughing at him. William had to get up and go first, leaving Simon to wait for no one to leave. During class, William sneaks Simon loving breakfast sandwiches. This earned Simon a sweet smile. William is followed by two bodyguards at all times during the day, but it didn't stop him and Simon from sneaking kisses and saying intimate things behind the two. William will also squarely visit Simon's house as a friend, but once inside Simon's house, he let loose. He hugged Simon from behind, kissed his neck and undressed him. Simon was afraid that someone outside would hear them turning on a computer game, and at this point Phyllis broke up with Augustine because he kissed Sarah. That made Augustine very angry. On this day, Augustine found William. He said one of the members at the party that night, Alexandria, was caught using drugs and was counseled out of school. He was afraid that this incident would expose them, and that instantly worried William. He told him that he was going to put the drugs on Simon. After all, Simon was the first to bring drugs to school. William, who knew about it, had mixed feelings. He finds Simon and confronts him about what's going on. Simon had to tell William about Augustine owing him money and being broke. It's the only way he can get Augustine to pay him back. William told Simon about the results of Augustine's deliberations. Simon thinks William is crazy and curses and prepares to leave. William calls him out on it, and he doesn't want to put Simon in charge. He's just talking to him. But the lover's attitude has broken Simon's heart. He simply said that he would not destroy the good name of the royal family and left sadly. William, left behind, holds his head in pain and helplessness. In order to keep Simon out of harm's way, William begins to have Augustine's financial situation investigated. Because of persistent tuition arrears, Augustine was approached by the principal to suspend him. An angry Augustine works out desperately at the gym to vent his emotions, but with the looming drug story still without a scapegoat, they came back to the hut to discuss it. Augustine argued for a push to Simon and William argued for a push to Alexandria. Augustine says he's not even qualified to decide. William instantly brings up the fact that Augustine's family has gone bankrupt. Without his family history, Augustine is simply not convincing. Everyone bowed their heads in acquiescence to William's claim. When confronted by the principal, everyone blamed Alexandria. On the day of prayer, William found Simon to clear up the misunderstanding. The two hugged and kissed, enjoying the joy of being close again after being apart. And that's when Augustine seeks revenge on William. Using the library's computers, he took the video, which was enough to destroy William, and posted online, just as Sarah passes by. But Sarah doesn't know what he's doing. She just gave him a disgusted look out the window and left. After the prayer, the Queen's assistant called to tell Augustine William has already helped him with his withdrawal. Hanging up the phone, Augustine is delighted, but it's too late. The video has already started to go viral. Someone sent William a link to the video and asked if the person in the video was him. Puzzled, William opens the link and exciting images fill the screen. There are already a lot of comments below the online platform. A royal crisis has come crashing down on us like a flood, and people are talking about this royal fragrance video. Once again, William has been subjected to national indignity over a scandal. He lay haggardly in bed, not knowing what to do, and Simon's having an even harder time being recognized everywhere he goes. The Queen came to the school, and as royalty, they needed to make a statement. Because William doesn't show his face in the video, it can't still be denied. The Queen is set to give William an interview on Saturday to deny the affair. In order to keep the scandal from then going crazy, she doesn't allow William to see Simon again, and Simon's mom decides to transfer the kids to another school. But Sarah disagrees. Simon asked Sarah to put herself in his shoes, but a stubborn Sarah turned and left. The Crown sent in IT officers, who tracked down the computer Augustine used to upload it. Sarah knows Augustine did it, but she doesn't say anything. Simon receives a message from William asking him to come to school for a chat and to face it with him. The next day, Simon found the courage to come to school. Everyone who saw him was secretly murmuring and looking at him with mocking eyes. After class, William and Simon Saturday facing each other. The two crossed their legs. Simon took William's hand and Saturday down next to him again, leaning on William's shoulder. The two men's hands clasped together. William says the Crown asked him to publicly deny it. Simon let go and told him that they have done nothing wrong, nor does the Crown have the right to dictate what William says or does. William leaned on Simon's shoulder, unsure of what to do. On the other side, Sarah makes a deal with Augustine to get resident status. She won't tell anyone that Augustine sent the video out, and Phyllis is trying to keep Sarah from transferring and to help William. She struggled through the video, looking for clues about the filmmaker. All at once, everyone is working for themselves and for what they love. On Friday day, Simon came to William's room to say goodbye to him. He stroked William's hair and said he'd be brave about it. The two kissed goodbye. William hugged Simon and thanked him for not leaving him alone. In the car, William bravely told his mom that he didn't want to make a statement. He just wants to be with Simon and have a normal life. It felt like he was going to be overwhelmed by the heavy crown of royalty, but mom righteously rejected him. No one wants to be born into royalty. Crown princedom is a privilege, not a punishment. Such pain she had experienced, but that's nothing to William's whole life. William comes home and sits on his bed, looking at pictures of his brother and playing pinball. He thought about how to face the interview. Simon was playing solitaire with a friend when he was told by the friend that William had denied that the person in the video was himself. Simon looked at the screen incredulously. In the face of royalty and love, William still chooses the former. He knew Simon must be upset at this time and kept contacting Simon, but Simon didn't respond to any messages. He had to come and apologize to Simon in person. Although he denies it, they can't still be together as long as they don't make public appearances. Simon is not in a position to accept this sneaky love. While William is a little angry, he just felt that if he admitted it publicly, then all hell would break loose. But for Simon, William's cowardice makes it impossible for him to hold on to this love. With tears in his eyes, he says he didn't ask William to admit it, but wanted William to follow his heart. He also didn't want to be William's secret boyfriend, and eventually Simon broke up with William. William, who can't part with anything, stands alone, shedding tears of sadness. After Phyllis kept looking at it, she noticed that there were little pigments on the video that looked exactly like the pictures Augustine had taken earlier. She then told William about it. William finds Augustine first thing and breaks down, questioning why he did it. Irretrievably, Augustine can only apologize. William and Augustine broke off their relationship. He came outside to call and tell his mom. I didn't realize that his mother had known about it for a long time, but just didn't tell him for the sake of so-called royal pride. Augustine ruins William's life with impunity, which infuriates William. On Christmas Day, the choir performs at the church, but this time Simon didn't have his big smile or look at William. He stared blankly ahead, like an emotionless singing machine. William, off stage, also looked serious. After the show, William found Simon and hugged him in front of everyone. He whispered, "I'm sorry and I love you," and left in his car. Sarah came over to comfort Simon, who smiled and took her by the shoulders. Inside the car, William looked ahead silently. His heart seemed to break at that moment. The movie ends here. William and Simon are not meant to be together. Eventually, they left each other with regrets, but also with the belief that they both loved each other deeply. The biggest obstacle between the two, it's not just the way people view homosexuality, it's the vastly different classes between them. Royalty has been binding William, kidnapping his inner world. This beautiful love that he met in his youth would have been carefully sealed in his heart, no matter how powerful and mature he is later on. And I hope that you and I in front of the screen and brave Simon will find a committed love. Well, that's it for today's story. If you like it, remember to subscribe to this channel and we'll see you next time.